They walk in that room, they become yours. And you got this energy inside your soul that says, I am the number one determinant of the success or failure of my students. Hey, y'all, when you get back, kick some butt. I'll see you in the winner's circle, celebrating your victory. Let's go. 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 Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, everybody.
And we are live. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to week 167 of the virtual AP Leadership Academy here in Charlotte, North Carolina, sitting in my daughter's kitchen. Let's see who we got here this morning. We got Ricardo Giannis, my man out there in Texas, Rodney Richardson, Scott Wiley, Seth Slater. And let me know where y'all coming from too, and hit that share and retweet button as you come in. We got Dr. Rella. Dr. Rella Hicks probably says, you know, I've been on here a lot of weeks and you mess up every week. It's time for you to get it right. I got you, Dr. Hicks. Takesha High is in the building. Grace Castaneda is in the building. Laurie, let's see. I'm going to say Jerpin. I probably messed that one up. Abasola Ashintolu in the building from Orange, New Jersey, man. I'll let you in on a secret. I tell everybody I was born in East Orange, but I was really born in Orange, right? We got Marsha Poe in the building. Demetrius Scott, that's Dr. Demetrius Scott in the building. Vanessa Zeskind is in the building. Dr. Rachel, oh man, Dr. Rachel, you know, I don't have my notes in front of me. Edo Eckett, yeah, I got it. Dr. Rachel Edo Eckett. She's going to be my guest on, I think it's July 29th. Whatever the last Saturday in July is, she's going to be in the building. We got Yolanda McKinney in the building. We got my man, Monty Abner, in the building. Ronald Pugh, Principal Dr. Tammy Taylor is in the building. We got VB Coach KS in the building. Create and Educate with the two doctors. Dr. Sheikah Houston, Dr. Tammy Taylor are in the building. John and Willeen Severson are in the building. That might be Severson, right? Yolanda McKinney said, let's go virtual AP Leadership Academy. That's right, man. She's been rocking with us since the first week back in May of 2020, the first Saturday. We got Lisa DeBose Walker in the building. Central Hicks is in the building. Rashad Davis is in the building. I can only imagine what the temperature is out there, Rashad, man, out there in Vegas, because it's blazing out here. Withers Jackson, Principal Karen Fletcher is in the building. Lysandra Brackens, Jasmine Harris, Stacy L. Joy is in the building. Principal Dot McKeever Jeter is in the building. My man, Darren Freedom Green is in the building from out there in Trenton, New Jersey. Good to see you, sir. My wife, the Queen, Kimberly Broughton Kafele, is in the building. I don't know if my daughter is on here or not. Oh, I don't see her name, but she in the building. I'm in her apartment. Cabria Kafele is in the building, and then her dog Ace, man. He's don't come over here. I'll send you right back. Oh, you threw the toy over here. Okay. Yeah, we got the dog in the building, y'all. I'm in his home, right? Guess he could run amok if he want. I'm in his home. Hey, y'all, it's 11:01. I'm getting ready to end it, man. Brandon K is in the building. I see you. Melissa Jones Chunu, she's going to be a guest later on in the year, too, man. We looking forward to that. Nolene Price Martin, Laurie Sewell Richards is in the building. Tawanda McClellan is in the building. McClellan is in the building down there in Mississippi. James Wilbur and Kendra Washington Bash, she's going to be in the building, I think, in like 2 weeks, man. Man, we got Jeff Williams. He was in the building with us last week, man. He was dropping that information. And y'all been watching that video. The people that weren't with us live, man, that thing is flying on YouTube, man. They were dropping some stuff. If you didn't see Jeff Williams last week, the Three Kings, along with One Chapman and Keena Walker, you better go ask somebody. Just go to YouTube and check it out on the Virtual AP Leadership Academy YouTube channel. Couple more. Mariel No Nonsense is in the building. Donald King is in the building. Kimberly Carruthers is in the building. And I think I'm going to end it right there. I don't know if I'm going to do my fire thing, man. Oh, I got it. Let me end it with Dr. Deborah Wortham, man, because, you know, that she's big time. I'm coming to a district, man. I think Rick Wormeli probably knows her, man, Dr. Deborah Wortham. I'm coming to the district in Roosevelt, Long Island, later on in the summer, fall, I guess you could say, and I see Whitney Smith. Good to see you, Whitney Smith, man, Dr. Smith. All right, here's my last one, my man, O.C. Chapman. Oh, man. Who was one of the Three Kings from last week that I just talked about. I got to go, y'all. Let me see how the spirit moves me on my greeting. Let me say formally now, good morning. Greetings. Welcome to week 167 of the Virtual AP Leadership Academy. Let me ask you this question, man. I ask y'all every week. How y'all feel, man? How y'all feeling? You know, you chose leadership, and even though it's summer for just about, I guess, everybody now, some of you work in summer school, leadership is like 12 hours, 14 hours a day during the summer, off season, 24/7. You sleep it, you dream it, you eat it, it's in you. Even when you try to cut that switch off, it's still lurking, right? So you got things on your mind. But, you know, despite that, you got to be on fire, man. You got to be blazing for the work. You got to be blazing for the children. You got to be blazing for the staff. You got to be blazing for your leadership. You got to be blazing for your craft. You got to be blazing for your school. You got to be blazing for this profession. You got to be blazing for you. So let me let you know how I feel, y'all. I'm in this apartment, man. I don't know if I should be doing this in here, but I'm going to do it real quick because I got to let you know that I'm on fire! Woo! I got it out of me, man. Now let's see if anybody knocks on the walls. I had to get it out, man, because, you know, y'all, I see y'all fire emojis too, man. You know, I gotta get it out, man. Now, you know something, y'all. I feel rejuvenated, right? Like I feel good. It's like you got to get that out, man. You got to get it out. Hey, y'all, I'm gonna do my commentary before I bring up my guest, and you'll understand why in a second. Let me just go through these real quick. To the first timers, some of y'all here because you know Rick, and you join because Rick's your man, your guy, right? But I want you to stay with me. Don't just come here for Rick Wormeli. Stay with me for the next 500 weeks, right? But to the first timers, welcome. You missed 166 previous sessions. So go to the YouTube channel, hit that red subscribe button. That's important. Hit that red subscribe button and then binge watch all 166 of the previous sessions, man. I promise you, I can promise you, you're going to say, man, it's fire in these videos. Oh, yeah. Ain't none of, even back when I used to, like, I wasn't sophisticated. I didn't have like a webcam and all that lighting. I used to do everything on the phone, man. So the first like 2-3 weeks, they look a little grainy, right? But the content is still there, right? So welcome to the first timers. Look, y'all, my week coming up. I need to see some of y'all in the building. Monday, National Harbor, that's a fancy way of saying Washington, D.C. I'll be at the National Association of Elementary School Principals on Monday. I don't know what time. You look in the program. I'll be there Monday, right? Then Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll be at my School Leadership Institute here in Charlotte, but I'm leaving and coming back. I'll be here, right here in Charlotte, 2 days, 9 to 4 both days. We talking leadership, man. You can still register. Go to principalkafele.com, scroll down to the announcements. You'll see it right there. Hit that register button, register, book your flight, and come on down to Charlotte with me for 2 days talking leadership. If you're an aspiring administrator, if you're an assistant principal, if you're a new principal, if you're a veteran, it doesn't matter. Come on down to Charlotte with me for those 2 days. Then Thursday, I guess it's not so relevant. I'll be with a school district, so y'all can't come to that, but I'll be in Hamden, Connecticut. Y'all can't come to that though, unless you're from Hamden. But then on Friday, I'll be in Denver, Colorado at the National Association of Secondary School Principals. I want to see some of y'all there. You make sure you holler at your boy when you see me too, right? So come on to Denver, and then I'm gonna fly back to Jacksonville, Florida, to be at the Black Educators Rock Conference on Saturday and Sunday. So y'all join me there, because on Sunday, I'm doing my leadership boot camp, man. I go hard at that conference on Sunday from 10 o'clock to 3. We talking leadership for the same groups that I said before. Champion Principal, I got you on my list of folks I need on this platform. I ain't forget you. So just be on the lookout. I'm going to be reaching out to you because I need you on here. So join me in Jacksonville at the Black Educators Rock Conference, but it's from July 13th through 16th. Man, everybody to somebody in terms of Black educators, man, we going to be there, right? But the audience, we ain't trying to limit that to Black folks. That's just the presenters. If you teach one Black child and you're not Black, we want you in the building. So you go to rockconference.org, rockconference.org, register, and I see you on Saturday and Sunday. You be there Thursday and Friday as well. Right. All right. Lastly, before I get to my commentary, it's the new joint, man, the assistant principal identity, protecting your leadership mindset, fervor, and authenticity. And then I got Ed Week just wrote a beautiful, well, they interviewed me. So beautiful story on my work with APs in the book. You can go to my Facebook page at Principal Kafele and you'll see the article there, or you can go to Ed Week and just search for it. It's there. Right. But get yourself a copy of the Assistant Principal Identity. My guest today, Rick Wormeli, he got this thick joint, man. This ain't all his books, man. I'll show my wife. I said, look at this, man. It's nonstop, man. You get this. Fair isn't always equal by my guest today, Rick Wormeli. You prepare to read this over a long duration of time, but you definitely going to have the information. Right? Once you read it, you can go right to Amazon and get yourself a copy. This is not his only book. That's just, I think, his latest, and he revised it, and here it is. I'm done, y'all. Let's go. My topic today, hit the share button, hit the retweet button, by the way. Hit all them buttons, man. Whatever platform you on, just let other people know. And here's the thing, y'all. Hit that like button, man. Them algorithms, man. The share and the retweet are good, and I appreciate those of you that do it. But that like button on these different platforms, that's the one to manipulate the algorithms to let the world know that there's something going on. So make sure you hit that like button, man. Even if you don't like it, just like it anyway. How about that? Right? So here we go. Here we go. Let me take it down a little bit, because this, we serious on this. We have these conversations about race all the time. Every one of y'all out there, I see you there, Flip Clay. Good to see you, Doc. We all out here, we all have these conversations around race. Sometimes we have them very private, and it's just a handful of people clustered, and you having a conversation. Sometimes it's a larger conversation with multiple different people, or a larger conversation with multiple different groups of people, race, ethnicities, cultures, etc. And we have these conversations, but I haven't had these conversations on this platform. I've had the conversations seep into some of the discussions. I've done some solo content when I was doing solo every week for the first year, 52 weeks, and there was a whole lot of race conversation in that around equity and diversity, inclusion, etc. But I decided for this one, I said, I want to have a conversation. I don't want to just ask questions. See, that's an interview. This today is not an interview. Hit that share button, hit that retweet button, and when you post it, let them know this ain't an interview. This is a conversation. So my guest, Rick Wormeli, is going to be asking me a few questions. I'm going to ask him a few questions. But we're talking about race. We're talking about race in the classroom. But when I was preparing for this, I stumbled on this article written by Dr. Leslie Fenwick from Howard University. and it's called Massive Resistance to Brown's Integration Decision Purge Black Educators. Once again, massive resistance to Brown's integration decision, Brown versus Board of Education, purged Black educators. I was going to just paraphrase this to you, but I decided, I said, let me read. It was 2 paragraphs that I said, I just want to give them to you verbatim. So bear with me, please. It says, as Black schools were closed in the name of desegregation. We're talking about Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. Stack, I see you out there and good to see you. As Black schools were closed in the name of desegregation, personnel and other funds that supported them were diverted to vouchers, tuition grants, and financial aid to support a growing system of all-white private schools under a practice labeled voluntary desegregation plan of choice. In their rush to stop Brown's mandate, segregationists initiated a massive resistance strategy that ultimately led to the firing, dismissal, or demotion of 100,000 exceptionally credentialed, experienced Black principals and teachers between 1952 and late 1970. So in other words, it's normal for us to hear of the 25,000 up to 30,000, 40,000 teachers that were terminated, right? Or their roles were reduced to other roles, that type of thing. But we typically don't hear about it, say from 54 or 52 even beforehand, all the way to the 70s. So those numbers obviously become inflated. They become much larger. So I want to read that last line again. So in their rush to stop Brown's mandate, segregationists initiated a massive resistance strategy that ultimately led to the firing, dismissal, or demotion, that's the word I was looking for, of 100,000 exceptionally credentialed and experienced Black principals, teachers, between 1952 and the late 70s. So in other words, a lot of these folks were coming up north, going into your top universities, including Harvard, and receiving their credentials, and then coming back south, because we're talking about the southern states and the border states. So we're talking 17 different states. They're coming up north, getting their education, going back south. But when they were replaced, they're being replaced by teachers who happen to be white, of less credentials than a whole lot of them folks who lost their positions. I got one more for you. So prior to Brown, I want you to hear these numbers well. Those of you that might say, can you repeat that? Just watch the video later, and then you can rewind it and all that kind of stuff. Prior to Brown, 35% to 50% of principals and teachers were Black in the 17 dual system states. So in other words, segregated education. Hear that number again. The percentages again, 35% to 50% of principals and teachers were Black in the 17 dual system states. Today, no state even approaches these percentages. Here it is. In fact, less than 7% of the nation's 3.2 million teachers, 11% of the nation's 90,000 principals. So you could be in some city and there's a whole lot of Black principals, and it feels like a lot of Black principals. But let's expand that to the country. 11% of the nation's 90,000 principals and 3% of the nation's nearly 14,000 superintendents are Black. That's it. Once again, 7% of teachers, 11% of principals, and 3% of superintendents. The underrepresentation of Black people in the nation's educator workforce is tied to the massive resistance to Brown. So in other words, Brown versus Board of Education is not something in the ancient past that's detached from contemporary times. There is a continuum there. There is a correlation there. So then I just put these 2 quick notes to myself here. Little Rock, Arkansas, and I see Yolanda McKinney right on the call. You know the history, but this is just your brother. I'm going to repeat it. After the 57-58 school year, where the Little Rock 9 attended Little Rock Central High School, 1 graduated because there was only 1 senior, right? Dr. King happened to be at that graduation, I might add, in 1958. But the following year, 58-59, the governor ordered the closure of all of the high schools in Little Rock, Arkansas. to fight against desegregation. But then the other big one, and then I'm gonna get to my guest, Prince Edward County in Virginia, which is the state that my guest Rick Wormeli is from. They closed the entire district, 1959, for the next 5 years. So the question might be to someone, maybe someone on the call, like how'd they get it? How the children get educated there? Well, the white children, through various different tuition grants and so forth, they're able to receive education through private schooling. But your overwhelming majority of black children, that option wasn't there for them. So they're in churches and that type of thing, community organizations, getting what was probably substandard compared to what they would get in the public school system. But just folks trying to do what they can to ensure that they're receiving some kind of an education. There are videos on YouTube that you could watch, because they call those the lost years. The lost year in Little Rock, Arkansas, that 1 year, the lost years, those 5 years in Prince Edward County. And they interview a lot of the students, because a lot of them are still living, obviously. And they talk about how those years were lost, right? But I just want you, as I transition now to my guest, I just want you to think about that. 5 years of a school district shut down because they don't want black children in the schools. Now, ironically, I spoke in that district a few years ago, and no one brought up the past, but you know your brother did, right? I couldn't be in there and not bring up that I knew where I was. So we had a little conversation about it. But again, because we got some young heads, because see, I know I got to keep saying this, y'all work with me for a minute. You all are going through the same school system that I went through, right? Public education in the United States. And I'm very much aware of and in tune with the miseducation that occurs, right? Or the marginalization of education that occurs, right? So, I mean, I still speak to huge audiences of people who never heard of Carter G. Woodson, right? Huge audiences of people who have no idea who he was, but yet they'll engage the children in Black History Month assignments, research papers, assemblies, or whatever it is, right? How you going to engage in anything Black history, and you don't know who the person is that founded Black History Month, known as Negro History Week in 1926? So therefore, it wouldn't be surprising to me that there could be somebody on the call right now, and you're not familiar with the fact that Little Rock, as a result of the Little Rock 9, closed those schools, those high schools, 4 schools for the next for that next school year, or that Prince Edward County, Virginia, closed the entire district for 5 years, right? Just let that marinate for a second. 5 years. Why? And let me just keep it real, because we don't want no black kids sitting next to our kids in those schools, period. Ain't nothing else to say about that. It's what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? So someone may say to me, Principal Kafele, man, this is good information, but what this got to do with the Virtual AP Leadership Academy? Everything. How you going to lead a school and you're not historically astute? Let me ask that question again. How you going to lead a school and you are not historically astute? This is a continuum. This is not some 2023 detached from the preceding centuries. It's all continuum. And in order to understand 2023, in order for 2023 to make sense, you got to understand 1923. You got to understand 1823. You got to understand 1723. Because if you don't understand the centuries before, then this stuff going on today, it don't make no sense. But if you have a sense of history, then, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. Because it's a continuum. Let's go, y'all. Man, I got my guests, man. And let me tell you something before I bring them up, because I'm ready to bring them up. This conversation I want to have today, this ain't for everybody, right? I can't just randomly reach out to one of my white colleagues and say, yo, I want you to come on live with me and have a conversation about race. I can't. because they're not going to be comfortable in that space, all of them. That's not me generalizing, but I know a lot of folks in this business, and spending 2 hours talking about race in the classroom might not be their wheelbarrow. But this dude I'm getting ready to bring up here now, Rick Wormeli, I've been knowing him for a long time, and I knew he was comfortable in this space. And he got some good questions to ask me too. So I'm getting ready to bring him on up here, man. Enough of stalling and delaying and talking. Hey, Rick, man, I'm glad to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I want to know what you had for breakfast.
I gotta let y'all know Rick got a sense of humor, for those of you that don't know him, right? So, and I'm sure you're gonna hear that throughout our conversation. You know, Rick, I had some scrambled eggs and some potatoes and a little orange juice, man. But that's not what got me up, man. What got me up, I didn't have to get up really until 8. I'm on the road. I'm in a hotel in Charlotte. I'm in my daughter's apartment right now. But I was up by like quarter to 5:45, because I was excited about just chopping it up with you for a little while. So for those out there that don't know who Rick Wormeli is, you've probably been influenced by him, because he got a lot out there. He sent me a bio. He said to me, he said, you don't have to read all that because I know it's long. You can just highlight the salient points. Hey, Rick, man, I'm reading all this. Hey, y'all, hang in there with me for a minute while I read this, because you need to understand this man's background. It's really phenomenal. I'm even going to read your quote, Rick. He said, I teach to dispel the dark and remind the universe that we are not inconsequential. I teach because it's infinitely compelling to watch dynamic souls punch through their not so elastic cocoons of childhood, daring the community to accept their forward motion, brushing complacency's dust from everyday ideas and objects by viewing them through children's eyes opens our own, and it connects us to that golden what if superhero in our earlier selves. I teach because setting a constructive example for my students generates a greater ethnic in me that I can achieve without their example or provocation. I teach because I'm deeply, unrepentantly grateful for life, and for the most potent way I know to express that gratitude is to build a world worthy of the next generation, then give them the tools to make it their own. Quote, end quote, Rick Wormeli. Let me give you a little bit about him, y'all, then we're going to get started. One of the first, watch this, y'all. This is why I had to read all of this. One of the first nationally board certified teachers in America. I got to read that again. One of the first nationally board certified teachers in America. Rick brings innovation, energy, validity, and high standards to both his presentations and his instructional practice, which includes 43 years teaching math, science, English, physical education, health, and history, and coaching teachers and principals. Rick's work has been reported in numerous media, including ABC's Good Morning America, Hardball with Chris Matthews, National Geographic, and Good Housekeeping magazines, What Matters Most, Teaching for the 21st Century, and the Washington Post. He is a columnist for Association for Middle Level Education magazine, AMLE, and a frequent contributor to ASCD's Education Leadership magazine. He's the author of the award-winning book, Meet Me in the Middle, as well as the best-selling books, Day One and Beyond. Fair Isn't Always Equal, subtitled Assessing and Grading in the Differentiated Classroom, 2nd edition. Differentiation from Planning to Practice and Metaphors and Analogies, subtitled Power Tools for Teaching Any Subject. All 5 from Stenhouse Publishers, as well as Summarization in Any Subject, 60 Innovative and Tech-Infused Strategies for Deeper Student Learning. And a lot of high-power stuff, y'all. Published in ASCD. His book, The Collected Writings of so far of Rick Wormeli, Crazy Good Stuff I Learned from Teaching Along the Way, is a collection of his published articles, guest blogs, and more than 2013 and more through 2013. I'm reading fast. The 2nd volume with articles from 2013 through 24 is on the way. His classroom practice is a showcase for ASCD's best-selling series, At Work in the Differentiated Classroom. Lastly, with his substantive presentations, sense of humor, and unconventional approaches, he has been asked to present to teachers and administrators in all 50 states, Canada, China, Europe, Thailand, Japan, Vietnam, Korea, Australia, the Middle East, and at the White House. He is a seasoned veteran of many international webcasts, and he is a Disney's American Teacher Awards 1996 Outstanding English Teacher of the Nation. He won the 2008 James P. Garvin Award from the New England League of Middle Schools for Teaching Excellence, Service, and Leadership, and he has been a consultant for National Public Radio, NPR, USA Today, Court TV, and the Smithsonian Institution's Natural Partners Program and their search for this giant squid. Rick lives in Herndon, Virginia with his wife Kelly, and both are proud of launching the last of their children into adulthood. The kids' college years now behind them. Rick and Kelly are now eagerly spending their children's inheritance, mostly on their new grandchildren, while Rick works on a new book on changing the culture of a school for ethnic grading practices. Woo! I had to read all that.
This concludes our conversation today. Thank you all for joining us.
Hey, y'all, I had to read that, man, because it's just a lot there, man. And and I believe in celebrating people, man. That's who I am. So, Rick, let's jump into it. I got these two questions that I ask everybody, and I want to proceed with my first of today's while we're here today. So as an educator, I read all of this in the bio, but now I want to step away from that. As an educator, who is Rick Wormeli?
I would hope it'd be somebody who could make a difference, but I'm standing on the shoulders of those who've shared so, generously with me, and I am a direct result of my parents' ethics. My father is in criminal justice and actually still working today. My mom was a cytologist and pathologist, and we would talk about ethics in medicine all the time, and in criminology and criminal justice. In fact, my father worked for the Justice Department many decades ago, and that stuff just translated into we're a part of a common humanity. And I think that I'm ceaselessly curious and very willing to go where others might feel uncomfortable to see what to make of it. And the idea that you take other ideas and you improve upon them, make them your own, but be sure to make sure you share it out. You don't hoard, you don't, gather it together for only you. So I don't know, a very, very grateful participant in the larger humanity, soon hoping to go intergalactic.
Hey, I love it. Rick, I've known this about you since I met you. It comes through without you boasting or bragging. You're a brilliant young man, and there's a million different directions you could have gone with your life. My question to you before we dive into our content as to why we're here together today: why education as opposed to anything else?
Well, one, I just embrace the creative intellectual self, and there's so many possibilities in creativity, exploration, and agency in the world of education. And as I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, it was all about how you're going to contribute to the world, not what's the world owe you. So I find it the antithesis of education to say, oh no, I deserve this, I'm entitled to this. The power, that the greatest calling is to serve in my mind's eye. Yeah. And I find meaning and joy in that, rather than the greatest calling is to receive and get all I can in some kind of affluenza of some sort. So I think that education was the natural course to go. And then, of course, I grew up in Northern California, in the San Jose area, and my friends were from all over the place, all kinds of different cultures and races and so on. So we're very communal. And it was just stunning to me that somebody would have a negative opinion of some other subgroup or major group or whatever it was. And it struck me that, they really don't have a lived experience with them, a familiarity. As JT Taylor, who's commenting here, and you were commenting, when you pull the camera lens back, and you have a larger perspective, you see the connections, and you put away that derogatory image of other people. Education seemed to be the place where I could get the most traction in helping other people walk that path. And so the idea that I find joy in the facilitation of the journey of others, that my success comes actually with the success of others. It was very powerful, and it kept me in education for a long time. And I saw that it was continuing to do more and more good. And I think that renews the stamina, the oxygen I need to get every year when you actually kind of see some of that stuff take root. And people went back and said, yeah, it mattered. It changed their students' lives. They have a different trajectory because they didn't settle for indifference or complacency. I'm really a big believer that democracy is an active thing, that you don't watch it passively from the side. And, we're going to make mistakes as we try to navigate that from time to time. But for you to hold back is a sense of being consenting or complicit in the negative things that don't live up to the promise of our ideals. And so, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes along that way, and I appreciate it. Oh my God, I appreciate it when somebody has the love for me and my students or my faculty to point it out to me, because then I know they care. What I worry about is when people are silent and they don't correct me. So then do I comport myself so I come across as accessible, or do I come across as deflecting and making excuses? So if I can be a model of that, that's great. But if I can drill down and give you some granular, some practical on that, then all the better. So it's rambling, but that's kind of where I am.
I love it. I love it. Let's jump into it. In terms of our topic, and let me say to the audience real quick, those of you who may have checked in after I went through the commentary and my announcements, we put this together as a conversation. So I'm not going to, this is not an interview today. I'm going to throw some questions at Rick. He's going to throw some questions at me. And we're just going to have a conversation talking about race in the classrooms. I don't know how long this is going to be, but just roll with us, y'all. Rock with us. Hey, Rick, after George Floyd's murder, May 25th, 2020, 9 minutes and 29 seconds being filmed on video in Minneapolis by a Minneapolis police officer. I always have to say that anytime I mention George Floyd. I saw I think collectively, but I'll speak for me, I saw an intensification of an attack or an assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I saw this intensity or it intensified bannings of books, certain books. And I'm talking right now in terms of books relevant to the African-American community or about the African-American experience or history. And I saw this heightened aggressiveness toward the marginalization of the Black experience in America via curriculum. So I saw those three things in particular. I want to throw a two-parter at you. So the first part, diversity, equity, inclusion. Let me isolate the word equity. Why, in your estimation, all this controversy around this word equity? What is that about?
Man, there's so many tendrils in what equity means. I mean, I get asked when I present, I am literally told in some schools and districts, do not mention the word equity or diversity because we'll lose funding or people will get up and walk out. So I think that is a huge thing that has to be addressed. I also realize that equity is the fundamental American ideal of what we were trying to do originally in our country, and we've fallen short of that. So we have a lot more work to do. But I think that there is a scarcity mindset. I only have so much, and if you're going to try to be equitable, then something is taken away from me. And we don't see the strength in diversity. We only see the threat in diversity because people have not had the shared lives or the experience with one another to see the entire humanity. As some other wiser people have said, this idea that some people just aren't as valued as other people is really gotten it up into the us and them, in a lot of places. That the question you're asking is, how do I get people past that, this equity thing? Because they see it as this toxic thing when really it's the powerful positive. So it's about framing. And I would encourage all educators to not accept the toxic framing of equity as politicians and some other educators might do, that we now give them a new frame. and a new lens through which to see our enterprise. So we have to prove how we are, as Justice Harlan would say, indissolubly linked with one another. I rise with the rising of others. I cannot rise unless others rise. I am not truly free until all are free. And all the others who have riffed on that from time to time. And so it's become such a weird thing because it's going unquestioned by journalists, by politicians, and by some educators when they see it as espousing a certain political party talking point. And if I show any kind of interest in really getting to the heart of it, it comes across as weakness. And I wonder when compromise became suspect or weak, when it truly is strength. And then how do I see it from the other's narrative? My inherited narrative is normal. Yours is not. Yours is not preferred. And that gets in the way and creates all of the microaggressions that become macro so quickly, that gets in the way of bias and our capacity to see students' insights, let alone faculty insights and their narratives as legitimate. So if I have to realize that I have my own, like for me, I'm racialized as white or racialized as, I don't know, middle class or whatever it is, or cisgender or whatever it might be, heterosexual. That's the way I've been enculturized. That might be the normal for others, but when I get to know others, it doesn't take away from who I am. It would improve who I am. And I think that only comes from experiential learning, in a sense, that I really have to live and walk it. And we want to, as leaders, let alone teachers in the classroom, we want to set up those opportunities to be able to do that and say, oh my gosh, what's going on? In my street, there are only 2 or 3 houses with white Caucasian families. And we have 28 houses just on my street, my neighborhood. Everyone else is of different color, culture, whatever. I'm in the DC area, so it's very multicultural. And my kids don't understand why some of their friends in other parts of the country who are very insular areas and that only have their own echo chamber are so concerned and immediately anxious when engaging or in a large room where they are the minority of people present of their skin color. They are incredibly tuned, and they just seem, as this wonderful person, and that your brown skin and your black skin and all that brings with it is an advantage and beautiful, rather than something that's less desirable. It's the same thing with religion. You don't practice my religion, I have less respect for you and your religion than if you practice my religion. We get like that a lot. And until we pull the camera lens back and see the larger perspective and see the connections and the common humanity, that we're 99.9% the exact same DNA, all of us, that it's going to be a troublesome thing. So I think there's poverty, there's the anxiety and depression, there's fentanyl abuse and it's happening, opioids, and all kinds of things going on. And people are dealing with that, and they don't have the reserves to extend themselves, because if I do, it threatens what I currently have, and I'm barely holding on as it is. So there's a lot we have to address to get them to feel comfortable to extend to others. And it's just rambling thought there, but what do you think?
No, you're not rambling, but let's stay there before I move on. You mentioned that there are certain districts that
yes,
they ask you, don't mention that word. Or something. And one of the things you said, some of the people may walk out.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I've been there. I've experienced the walkout. Right. But the other thing is, I remember this one district I was setting up, and the client saw my computer. So they saw one of the screens, and it said equity something, something, something. And they said to me, you're not going to say that, are you? I said, yeah, it's part of the presentation. So the audience was sitting there. I was up on the stage, and the client said, you can't say that. I said, but it's I said, that word is inherent in my work. It's all over the place. She said, can you delete it? I said, no, I'm not going to delete it. Right. I said, I can leave. And she said, no, you can't leave because the audience is here. I said, then we're going to have to figure this thing out. Right. So that experience forced me to rethink the way I present in those particular locations, because I want to talk equity. because it's important. I don't want to run away from it because there's a client afraid. So what I was able to do, I'm able to talk equity without mentioning the word equity and get a standing ovation. I'll get a standing ovation from the same ones that will leave because they don't realize what I just did. Because see, just being strategic, I took this equity, which has no universal definition, and I said, I'm going to give it one. I'm going to give it my own anyway. I said, meeting the children where they are. And then I put these 3 dots, dot, 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 as they are, period. And then I ask my audiences all the time, where's the politics, right? What part are you threatened by? Because as far as I'm concerned, meeting a youngster right there where he or she is, as they are, is just great teaching, right? So now I'm able to get into my whole equity discussion for 6 hours and not have to use the word equity. But if I do use the word equity, then we'll break it down the way I just did. And now everybody's good. You know, because even on them Zoom calls, like, oh, Kafele, you know, you can't use equity. What, meeting young people where they are as they are? That's a problem in your district?
Yeah.
Well, that's how you see equity. That's where I'm at.
Or perhaps taking the district mission statement or principles and going, look, that's equity right there. You just called it something else.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Are we going to let the bullies, the tyrants, whatever call them, take away the power of that word? I mean, I know words have power and I get it. And I don't want to escalate. I want to de-escalate so people can see clearly. Got it. However, I'm very tired and resentful that I would have to dance through a minefield. And I want to exemplify the courage it takes
to moonwalk like Michael Jackson.
To real. Yeah. as we did that. Absolutely. But what was I going to say? Oh, there are a lot of people who have this sugarcoating of equity, and they say like it's opening opportunity to things. Oh, now we've got more people of color in advanced classes or whatever it is, but they don't change anything within the class and the way it's taught. So I love the idea of it's responsive, it's teaching the way students best learn, but even then it gets to the core of your pedagogical core values. I mean, your beliefs. Do I believe that I should teach the way students learn or the way I learned? And when they don't learn, blame them for their lack of learning when you're the adult that's trained and how the brain best learns. And so now we have to get into cognitive science and go, oh, look at how equity is supported by what we know about how the mind learns and how students flourish. And you keep saying agency, but you're denying the agency when you're imposing this. Oh, so you're right to give them the practicalities. And I don't know about you, but when I've given people principles and practicalities and they try it out and it works, as Tom Gusky and others say, they get the psychological reward that's very affirming and they're willing to do more of it. So a lot of what I do is let me get these into the hands of teachers, get them to try it, and then they see the benefits, which recreates the meaning, why they went into teaching in the first place, and they're on fire. They're willing to go for it and continue.
Yeah. You know, you said some stuff in there, and I just want to highlight this one thing. You know, we talk about meeting young people where they are as they are, but then you said, what about that teacher is basing instruction on how I, as the teacher, learn, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now we got a problem because because now we're no longer student centered. If we ever were, we're teacher centered, we're teacher driven, and you're gonna have to get this the way I got it, the way I see it, the way I process it, even though you may not receive it the same way, right? So now we're not even talking about equity, right? So I told you I had a two-parter for you. And then we're gonna flip it on to you. Okay. History. You know,
and I know I'm talking to a historian, so not only dynamic but the historian, and I'm so grateful. So go ahead.
I call myself a lover of history. I can't embrace that word just yet. I got a lot.
Okay, all right.
But I love me some history, particularly African American, American history, that African American component of it. But here's the thing. To this day, 2023, America is still afraid of, wary of, intimidated by the history of Black people being given, taught, imparted in its fullness, that young people across racial, ethnic, cultural groups gain a fullness of what this story is, what this truth is. So, so what we'll do is marginalize it and give you a little something to Dr. King here, a little President Obama there, a little Frederick Douglass here, probably the most irrelevant components, all that kind of thing, but won't really go into the meat of the story. I happen to have had, and I won't go into it here because it's not about that here, but I happen to have had a superintendent that gave me free rein to take this curriculum, science, math, social studies, language arts, and one of the teachers who's now an administrator and a board member, board vice president, Wayne Stackhouse in East Orange, New Jersey, is on the call. Yeah. But he was a beginning teacher with me in that era. And that superintendent gave me free rein to do something that I've never done before, never been able to do again. And that was to put the children in the center of the learning, to put the children at the center of the reading, of the research, so that learning was culturally, racially relevant for them. So when we saw the achievement levels becoming what they became, it was a no-brainer for me. That's why I approached the superintendent with the initiative in the first place. So my question to you, though, why, in your mind, the fear of Black history, the fear of allowing the story, this rich story of Black people, not beginning in 1619, but going back into historic times before 1619, inclusive of 1619 to the present? Why are we so fearful of this information?
A couple of ideas. One, we've romanticized it so much, and we're still stuck in that romanticization. The whites and those that are listening to all this stuff, and childhood was such a peaceful, less complex time. So I want to go back to that. I mean, I am overextended, so I want to go back to a simpler time. It seems soothing. So to soothe our anxious times, perhaps. But I think the larger issue is, if you count yourself as a just, compassionate individual and somebody who supports democracy, you would be awash in anguish so much by the cruelty demonstrated to other humans through the ages, and then you would be forced to do something about it. And it's easier if I have a simplistic view, so that I don't have to summon the energy to have difficult conversations and to dismantle and confront those things that do not support a just community or just society. And that is really hard. Yeah, somebody's posting Zaretta Hammond stuff. It's wonderful to do that. Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do as a leader and a colleague is, can you show me your proof of your knowledge of your individual students, their culture, their realities, their narratives in your instructional design? If I can't see that and you can't show me the proof, I doubt your lesson's effectiveness. Because so many teachers are about sense making. Here are the 5 or 6 protections under the First Amendment. Here's what the role of mantissa is in a logarithm. Here are the constellations. Here's how I add fractions. But you have to understand, the real learning happens with meaning making. How do I make this my own? How do I translate what you're saying into something I understand? Metaphors, analogies, aha, connections. Oh, I can use this outside of my class. Oh, that will help me as I do this thing that I value. So many teachers are lost in, let me just get through curriculum coverage, which is to remove from view. We don't want to be known for covering curriculum. We want to reveal curriculum. We want to discover all these different things. But they forget about meaning making. And so we circle in lesson plans. Where's the sense making? Where's the meaning making? And you can't do meaning making unless you're completely cognizant of the students as individuals in your class. Then the other part of that is this. It's kind of a third part. That fear comes from, I think there's real imposter syndrome. This is beyond my wheelhouse. If I am going to say things that further a bad negative stereotype, I'm going to demonstrate muddled thinking. I might offend somebody. It's just easier to keep the peace if I say nothing, which is an overt act of consent as you do that. So the idea that we want to get skills and tools in teachers and principals and superintendents' hands, the larger community's hands, our church, synagogue, and mosque hands, to get the skills in their hands, the tools to say, I can have this conversation, and I can have the people with whom I'm talking extend grace to me as I extend grace to them, and a sense of forgiveness when I don't get it right and I'm unintentionally, unaware, biased or harmful in some way. But do I conduct myself that you care enough to talk to me about it? In other words, absent those skills and tools, I think people are very frightened of it blowing up and escalating. I have literally had superintendents say that to me when principals call. I do a session on how do you have conversations about difficult topics, things like that. Jennifer Abrams does this. So many other people do that. And I know you do that as well, but we give them the tools, but they say, Rick, we just had a transgender issue with the bathroom. We just had a racist issue in our school or our community. Children are crying. Teachers are upset. Some people are leaving the building early, but we're not allowed to talk about it because we're afraid it will blow up even larger, because they don't have the skills or tools to do that, which is a basic part of our humanity, our civility, and of course, democracy. So I'm a big pusher of let's train not just in 8th grade civics, but close to pretty much every single year, because your interpretation as a 16-year-old of your rights and responsibilities when you're stopped at a traffic stop and how that plays out in our society is very different than what you understand as a 5th grader or an 8th grader. Yeah. It's a constant part of our DNA as America, and it's got to be constantly in the forefront, and not a frightening thing, but a welcoming thing, or nothing will change. I think also there has to be moral imperative, outrage to rise, so that you find the stamina to see it through mechanics that elude you. A lot of times people go, I don't know how to do that. And so they lose it because they don't have the why, the purpose behind it to keep them driven, even when fatigued. And that's hard. We all get, reform fatigue and all that stuff. But then how do we pick it up? How do we pass it off to others? And then they pass it back to us, but we can keep it going. I think that needs to happen a lot more. So that's 3 or 4 fold as to why there's fear, I think. Go ahead. What's your?
No, that's powerful stuff. But I want to go back to something you said in the beginning.
Okay.
You said in the beginning of this particular question, you said the learning occurs via meaning making.
Yeah.
And I noticed it resonated with a lot of people on the call. Okay. And I want to let me just holler specifically at the leaders on the call now. Hey, leader, you walk into a classroom. Let's assume you're not a full-time disciplinarian and you actually are in the classrooms, right? You're actually engaging teachers in coaching, right? So you're having those pre and post sessions, but you're in the classroom. So when you're in the classroom and you're observing instruction, are you able to see the meaning making occur through the conversations in that student-centered learning environment? Because see, a lot of times, we come out of this full-time disciplinarian experience as an assistant principal, and then we become principal and we don't know what that is, because we didn't experience as an AP. So I go into a classroom and I think, I'm just in there and the instruction looks good. The students look engaged. They're very quiet, right? They're sitting very nicely in these 5 rows, that type of thing. And we know that the learning is not occurring in that situation. So I'm saying to the leader out there, when you walk into those classrooms, either over the summer, if you work in summer school, or at the fall when you get back into school, zero in on if that instruction is leading to meaning making. And see, that's not just a child thing, y'all, because I'm thinking about myself, and I know how my brain works. And I know that auditorily, I can't rely on my ears to give me the information. I can't, unless it's stuff that I've got so much prior knowledge, prior experience with. But if it's new and I don't have anything to connect to it, I can't make meaning of it because I got nothing to connect to it. So I got to now read something because I'm visual. So I got to read it slowly, process it, connect it to something in order to give it meaning. Man. I'm just throwing at it some of the leaders out here. So now let me throw the racial dynamic, and then I want you to throw one at me. The racial dynamic. So you got this diverse classroom, and you got children of different racial, ethnic, cultural background, experiential background. They're very different from one another. But in terms of them making meaning, we're treating them as if they're all the same. The experience from birth is the same, right? So I got the same experiential level. The reading to the youngster at home is the same. Although youngster A has a vocabulary walking into pre-K well over 1,000 words, and youngster B, preschool, is walking in with 100 words or less vocabulary. But how do I make meaning when I don't have the same vocabulary because of a different experiential background of the youngsters in the classroom? So I'm saying now there's some cultural things you got to look at. There's some racial things you got to look at. You got to look at the totality of the child when we're having the conversation about what Rick just so eloquently articulated, making meaning of the learning. Oh man, I think we missed that on too large of a scale,
and too many don't value that.
Yeah.
You know, they don't see it as worthy of their time. But I'd like to suggest something else. If you don't have a large repertoire of instructional response or a large repertoire of assessment ideas, you get really locked in. There are only two ways to assess. Well, what if this assessment format doesn't allow that kid to accurately portray what he knows? But if you were to do it this way, he would be all over the place and the gold inside him would be revealed. So if I say, oh no, you must learn the same manner, the same pace as others, you must test the same way. When we're really testing evidence of learning, not the vehicle used to deliver the learning. I don't really care if you take the test. I care whether or not you demonstrate the standard, the target, the learn outcome. But you can do it by creating a kinesthetic model of some sort or an art piece, and then critique other variations of that theme, whatever it is. You can demonstrate that evidence, one that creates agency and that I respect and honor what you bring to learning's table. In so many classrooms, students don't feel like they have a seat at the table. They don't have a role to play in their own learning. It's how can I make you more passive so I can have a false sense of control of my classroom management, when really, when you have a larger influence in the classroom, there's actually more teacher facilitated management properly done. So again, I need to realize I need to know you so well. I know how to change my instructional design so that you see yourself in the learning. Absent that, it makes you very easy to become passive rather than the active. And then I can't bemoan when you don't care about your learning or you don't follow through on stuff. But then I have to make sure that I have 15 different ways to assess this, 25 different ways to teach this, so that when you present to me something that is out of my normal, I am so like, bring it on, we're good, I'm okay. But teachers who don't have or continue to grow their instructional repertoire, their assessment repertoire, feel very threatened and defensive when a student is different than their norm. And when they open that up and they realize I have all these other possibilities and I have these good people I can go to when I feel like I'm out of my depth, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, and I can see it as strength rather than threat. So I would see it as a leader's responsibility to help facilitate the continued growth of both assessment options, assessment ethics too, and instructional design options for teachers, so that no matter what comes up, you're able to kind of be versatile and agile in the moment, which is showing full respect for what the child brings to the table.
Wow. You know, two things you said: instructional repertoire,
yeah,
assessment repertoire. Man, I'm thinking about these leaders walking into these classrooms, observing instruction. Yeah. Right. I'm thinking about leaders having those coaching, those one-on-one sessions with teachers. But have I gauged the significance of that instructional repertoire with the diversity of young people who are sitting in that classroom? And have we even had the conversation about the assessment repertoire that speaks to the, going back to that equity definition, meeting young people where they are, as they are, begs that assessment repertoire.
But, you know, that gets into equity too, in that I can be very aware of where you are, but that implies I make that actionable. There are a lot of teachers I know who spend all this time getting to other kids and then go right in and do what they were going to do anyway, because that's just a little bit outside. They can't do that unless they have this constantly, this continuing oxygen, teacher mojo flow of that large repertoire. So yeah, it's fine. I want to be aware of my kids, but I want to see proof that you connected and changed instructional design as a result of what you knew.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, go ahead and hit me.
All right.
I got some in there throwing these questions at you.
Here's one I'd like. I am a man and an educator who's racialized as white and so on, and I'm benefiting from the privilege that comes from that. Totally get it. But what do you want me to know as a white educator in America about the Black educator experience?
I love that question. Hey, Rick, hear me. And to my educator colleagues out there, my white colleagues in particular, based on the way the question was asked, I want you to hear me. I want to be that teacher, right, that you asked about. So instead of me speaking in the abstract, let me be him. Hey, teacher out there. Hey, colleague. Hey, non-Black colleague out there. I'm Pedagogy Kafele. I'm me. I am not you. My experience is not yours. My background is not yours. My purpose for being in this classroom is probably not yours. Because see, and I won't pretend to speak for all Black people. That's why I want to speak for Pedagogy Kafele, but as a Black man. So teacher out there, I'm not in this profession because I solely want to teach. I'm in this profession because this is my role within the civil rights, the Black power movement, right? So I'm coming at this thing from a whole different perspective, a whole different world view. I'm trying to play my role in uplifting a people. So if that's not who you are, teacher, in that classroom, you can't even relate to me. You can't even identify with me. So what I want you to do, based on what you just asked me, Rick, I want you to take some time to get to understand me. I want you to take some time to get to know me. I want you to take some time to get to familiarize yourself with my world, because my world is so different. I remember, Rick, as a brand new teacher in Brooklyn, New York City, and I had posters of just various different African-American leaders and business people and writers and so forth. And I was the only African-American teacher in the school, but the student body was about 95% Black and maybe 5% Latino. So the teachers went to the principal and they asked the principal to request of me to take all the posters down. They said the posters in my room was offensive to them, my colleagues, who quite frankly have no business in my room unless we're collaborating on things, right? But I'm not teaching them in my room. But that was my foray into education, that this principal, who was Black, had the audacity to ask me, Kafele, can you take that down because it's offending the state? So I got Marcus Garvey in the room. I got Malcolm in the room, right? I got Ida B. Wells in the room. I got Sojourner Truth, and I got so many of them. It's a roll call. I didn't take them. I told the principal, because see, hear me, somebody, and I ain't gonna preach, I promise. We have to stand on something. I'm talking to somebody out there right now. You can't just have your values and your principles, but you don't stand on them, then they're not yours. It's just fluff when you're having some kind of conversation with somebody. But the true test of whether or not these values and these principles are yours, that you own them, is when you're tested. And when you're tested, you're going to find out who you are. And I see Dr. Vincent Stone, that's like my dog. And I see you on here, so you know I ain't lying, Doc. So I'm gonna say to the folks out here, going back to the question now, because the Holy Ghost got in me. So I'm gonna say this to you: them black educators, learn from them, right? Even if that's a rookie, and you've been there for umpteen years, but that man, that woman, they got some perspectives that you don't have, right? They're looking at these children through a lens that you're not looking at them through, because you don't have that experience. See, it's in so many cases, Rick, and I did not want to answer this question long because I know you got so many more, and so do I. But you think about that white person that did not grow up in a diverse community. So grew up in a community that's white. Hit that share button, somebody. Hit that retweet button, somebody. And they grow up in this community, and their friends look like them. They go on to high school, their friends look like them. Then they decide, I'm going to college, and they gravitate to people who look like them. That's just normal. When I went to college, I gravitated to the ones that look like me. That's one of the reasons I know my man Vincent Stars. I see my man Marcus Jackson.
Jackson.
One of the reasons he and I are so close, right? Even though I was sparring with him last night, but that's another story, right? So here we go. So now that teacher decides, that person decides, I want to teach. And I think I want to go to the urban school district for whatever the reason, whatever. And now that bubble that white teacher has been in all his or her life, and that bubble of that black child, they may not have gotten further, in some cases, too many cases, past the block he lives on. Like, my world is my block. My world is this small little community, neighborhood within a larger community that I live in. I don't really know the world outside of that. And the school is sitting right there in that neighborhood. So now the two bubbles intersect. Ooh. You know something? That teacher, I meet that teacher, Rick, on the road. And during informal lunchtime conversations, we have this conversation. Hey, teacher, talk to me about your prior experience with Black people, particularly intimate familiarity where you really know us. And in some cases, that teacher is that one that has that intimate familiarity. But in most of my situations, hey, I don't have that. So you telling me, teacher, that your coming into this school as this teacher is your initial exposure to Black people on an ongoing basis, protracted basis? Your third graders? Yes, Principal Kafele. And guess what, teacher? You don't know Black people, right? You know Black third graders, but you don't know Black people in the larger sense. You have so much learning to do, right? So I'm saying all that to say this: when that teacher comes in, don't if culturally I'm different from you, because make no mistake about it, Rick, culturally as a teacher, I was me. They would look at me in a white suburban school. They would look at me sideways because I'm authentically me, right? So when that teacher comes in, don't look at him sideways, and don't look at that teacher. I don't care if that young man comes in at 6'8", weighing about 270 pounds, looking like he's the defensive end of the New York Giants. Let me tell you something. Don't look at that person as a disciplinarian. See that person as an intelligent, promising teacher that wants to come in here and educate these children at the highest level. Not someone that's going to come in here some bruiser and get in line. You know, that's not what he's there for, unless he doesn't know better. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, it's so much more, but we got so many questions.
Well,
Right.
just to follow up, what if you do that and you're in that situation and your true colors come out? You discover this about yourself and you don't like what you see. I didn't realize I held these prejudices, these biases. An example would be, oh, here, I learned everything. I read a book on teaching Black children, so now I can do it.
Yeah.
And then you homogenize that all Blacks will respond like this. All Blacks come from this. And you've just done just as much harm.
Yeah.
And you've been blind. What's a leader to do with that educator?
Yeah. Now you're talking about that white educator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a white educator coming in and saying, well, all Blacks are like this. They don't see the tapestry that are Black individuals in America and beyond. And so they just pigeonhole. Well, for my Black kids in my lesson, I will do this. For my brown kids, I'll do it. And like, oh no, you've missed the point.
What a powerful question for this platform, because see here, we talk all of this falls on the leadership now in terms of your question. Like, who am I? Have I read the room? Have I analyzed the audience, so to speak, in speaker language? Do I understand who's on my staff and what my role is? And not only bringing together these individuals as a team, but ensuring that they are being provided with the right kind of information, the right kind of conversation amongst us as a team, that we can begin to talk about things which in another world we would deem uncomfortable, right? So let me get them past this discomfort and we start having the real conversations. But knowing that I got a young audience on here, it's not so much as the first, like the leader, you watching us this morning, and then you go back to school in the fall and here you go, bam, we getting ready to get uncomfortable. No, because then you're gonna lose them. It's let me read the room. Let me really know who my staff is, and let me start to kind of feed them slowly. Little something here, little something there, and we start engaging in this conversation while simultaneously you are letting your staff know who you are. So you don't want to come in as one thing and then switch gears and you're somebody else. My staff knew who I was. I led 4 different schools. They knew who Baruti Kafele was. Make no mistake about it, as it relates to these issues of race. But I'm not going to shove it down their throat that first day, that first week, that first month. I'm going to read the room and I'm going to gauge what they can tolerate, but I'm coming, right? I'm coming. And ultimately, we're going to get to a point where we ready to take a bigger gulp now, right? Yeah. And we're going to break up all the cliques, and we're going to have folks, because, I've been in a lot of schools where within the first 5 minutes, that staff in that auditorium or in that library don't know one another. They only know the ones they're sitting with, and that's usually the ones that are in the same grade level or the same subject area, but they don't know one. So we're going to break that up. So not only having the uncomfortable conversation with folks that I'm familiar with, but we're going to have these conversations with folks I don't even know, but been working in the same building with me for 10 years, right? You see the person in the hall where you don't even know their name, right? And I mean, I've actually engaged them in that, and it's just amazing to see. So often when I'm in these schools that so many of the staff are strangers to one another.
This is a very small sidebar, but when we have faculty meetings, you have to reference the speaker in front of you as you incorporate it into your response. So I disagree with what Jeff just said right there. And Iqbal was one of this. You have to do that, even as faculty, let alone in the classroom. And it works really well. You see them in the hallway, you're much more likely to say, hey, just by using their names in that meeting. Yeah. I do wonder, though, what do you think schools of teacher ed and principal ed, what do they need to improve about teaching Black and brown children? Is there something that's kind of missing in that background that you wish was more a part of that preparatory process?
Absolutely. And you're asking the most relevant questions, man.
All right, let me hear like 3 or 4 things that really need to improve.
Let's talk about the fact first that class may be diverse, or that class may be all Latino, or that classroom may be all Black. That classroom may have LGBTQ students in it, right?
Yeah.
So now am I prepared to walk into that environment of students that may not look like me or may not have the same principles and values that I have? So for that teacher ed program, and this is one of my criticisms of those of so many of those programs, that teachers are being prepared to come out, or pre-service teachers are being prepared to come out and work with the generic child. But the generic child, as far as I'm concerned, we haven't met that youngster yet. Right? So what about the specificity of the children? And so as a program, we have to have the courage to develop programming that speaks definitively to the students that these teachers may encounter when they go on to do their student teaching and ultimately go into the classroom as a full-time teacher. So that's critical. But then another piece that's critical for me is the whole idea around history, right? So you got pre-service teachers who are being prepared to teach, but may know nothing about American history outside of what they were exposed to K-12. So there's a whole other, there's so many other dimensions. The African-American dimension is one of them, but then there's a whole Latino dimension. There's a whole Native American dimension. There's a whole Asian American dimension. So that when I walk into that classroom, if I could be specific on Black children in this regard, because Black children still represent the wrong side of the achievement gap, right? The extreme wrong side, I should say. So when I walk into that classroom, do I know who these children are, historically speaking, culturally speaking? Do I recognize them? See, if I'm absorbed into pop culture, then my vision of who they are is clouded by the pop culture, which in so many cases is portraying a narrative which is not accurate as to who Black people are historically speaking. So I want to make sure that in that teacher preparation program, teachers are learning history. And I even want to throw some books at you. Because when I'm having this conversation with teachers and administrators and so forth, I say, look, here's the books I want you to start with. I say, I want you to read book. Yeah, there you go. Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. I said, you got to read that one. It's a thick read. It's 500 some odd pages, but it's an easy read. And it's just a very good narrative of Black people, West Africa, all the way to, depending on what edition you get. I think the last one was written the 70s. So getting that sense of West African culture before 1619, the Middle Passage, and then obviously enslavement up until around the 70s. And then Lerone Bennett passed away some time ago. The second book, John Hope Franklin's From Slavery to Freedom. Such an important book, which those two books complement each other. I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. They're equal, but they complement one another. From Slavery to Freedom by John Hope Franklin. My third book is Introduction to African Civilizations by John G. Jackson. Now, again, because I know that there are people on the thread and you probably got all your favorite books and you want me to, I can't list all them books. I'm giving you these 4 introductory books, right? Just 4. So Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson. And then my 4th, those that know my work, you would know I'm going to go here, The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, right? Those are my 4 intros that I believe should be in every teacher preparation program, this pre-service teacher program that's working with teachers who will probably go into an urban district, right? That you gotta have a sense of history, because that history that you gain has got to be interdisciplinary. So I've got to find a way to make meaning out of math as it relates to being culturally relevant. I got to find a way to make meaning out of that science. Let me put Black children in that science. Let me put Black children in that mathematics. Let me put Black children in that language arts, reading, writing, speaking, listening, and viewing. Let me put Black children in that social studies, right? Let me allow them to see themselves. So the example, I guess you heard me last week, and we were talking about Independence Day, right? So, but when you talk Independence Day, you got to talk Revolutionary War, and it's millions of Americans, I'm sure, that do not know the role that Black soldiers played, not only on the colonial side, but on the British side, both fighting for their freedom. So I didn't even mention the British side last week, but over 20,000 Black troops on the British side who were promised their freedom. Well, I'm saying here, I need Black children to understand that, because if not, then they're going to grow up thinking that the Revolutionary War was a white man's war, and which it was, but it had Black participants. So they're fighting for their own freedom, and then yet here comes Emancipation Proclamation right within the midst of that war, and then enslavement lasts for an additional 87 years, right? So Black children have to understand that, but Black teachers can't teach what they don't know. So principal, you can't hold me accountable for this, and I ain't never been exposed to it. So principal, be our teacher, be the teacher, and expose us to the information that we need, which increases the probability that we're going to be equipped to be able to work with young people of color in the classroom, because we have a further understanding.
But then a very uncomfortable, scary option or consideration. If it's history, it's safely in the past. I can study it in the abstract. I don't have to do anything with that other than become involved. The real rubber hits the road, where we say, how does that happening in the past and a part of the culture have its very direct tendrils? The cables are directly related to the way we interact and society is today with Black and brown children and others than whatever your skin color is. Yeah. And I think that if schools say, well, you've got to read these 4 books and you've got to get up to speed on that, that's a little bit easier to get across, become aware, yay. But now, how is that still in existence? The interaction with that and the principles of that, foundationals, whether we recognize it or not, still alive. And the heartbeat is still pumping in some communities with that very stuff. And then how do we help our kids navigate? So I don't think it can be, you have to know the history. You have to see how the history impacts what's going on today and see that as legitimate, not, well, that's history, get over yourself, which is what so many whites tend to do.
Well, see, and glad you said that, because see, when George Floyd was murdered, and American citizens spilled into the streets, multiracial, protests all summer, demonstrations, marches, etc. Then, because of just the way I've positioned myself in the education world, I was inundated with emails, inboxes, DMs from white educators asking me the same question throughout July and August. It was incredible, because we all thought schools were going to reopen. So the question was, Principal Kafele, steer me in the right direction of books I can read to understand systemic racism, white supremacy, white privilege. They were, it was crazy. So all these emails, all these inboxes, and I said to every one of them, I know what you're looking for, but I cannot recommend it to you right now. I said, here's what I need you to do. And I gave them the 4 books I just gave you: Before the Mayflower, From Slavery to Freedom, Introduction of African Civilization, and Miseducation of the Negro. And I said, here's why. I said, if I give you the books that do the analysis of racism, that break down racism, that break down systemic racism, white supremacy, all that kind of stuff. I said, here's the thing. I guess you'll have some understanding, but here's what you may not have. You may not have an understanding of the history that got us here. See, so now somebody break down racism, somebody break down prejudice, discrimination, all that kind of thing. All right, but do you understand these 400 years?
Yeah.
Right, this ain't something new. So there's background here. So I want you to have the background. I want you to have the foundation in order for the summer of 2020 to make sense. That was a breaking point. You know, the only thing new about George Floyd was it was on video.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But so because it was on video and we all saw it, that was a breaking point as to why people flooded them streets in 2020. So as teacher has to understand that. Teacher has to understand the history that got us here toward being effective in making those connections with those children in that classroom. We're not even talking to pedagogy. We're just talking about in terms of just understanding, right? So if for example, young person is coming into the classroom and is devoid of anything history, teachers got to understand that, because more than likely there was no exposure at home, right? But I'm not going to point my finger at that parent, because that parent is a victim of the same cycle. So I'm not pointing my finger there either. I'm saying, look, this thing is generational. And as teacher, your knowledge base has to be so much more vast than what it is that linear of I'm going to go into a classroom and teach my content areas to children with the hope that it sticks.
You know, when I bring this up with white friends, family, colleagues, I get a lot of, when I share a story or something, oh, that didn't really happen. It's dismissive.
Yeah.
And it's a gobsmacking amount of privilege that you are in a position where you can dismiss somebody else's story as less legitimate or assign a nefarious purpose behind it. Yeah. You're just doing that to X, Y, and Z or whatever. By the way, Kimberly George is spot on. I really enjoyed Fugitive Pedagogy.
Yeah.
So let's lift that up as a good one.
That's a good, yeah. And I've posted that book. I've put it on the screen on this platform, but here it is again, folks. Dr. Jarvis Gibbons. That's another one that you want to have on your shelves in your library, but particularly reading it. Let me throw a question at you. We're gonna have to do a part, and here let me let the audience know. We're gonna do it. Let's keep this going, Rick. We're gonna do a part 2 and 3. Right. I'll call you and schedule it, because I'm only on like question 3, right? And it's 12:30 already, and you probably on the same number. But let me throw this at you. You know, there's an expression I think that we all use called back in the day, right? So we talk back in the day, certain things, you know. So a lot of times when we talk about back in the day, we're talking about a very long time ago. It could be beyond our lifetimes, like back in the day, back in the old days, that type of thing. My back in the day, particularly, is in my initial years as an educator, as a teacher. That's my back in the day, and my first years as a principal. So when I hear that expression in the context of education, there's a lot of scenarios that pop up in my head. But in the context of this discussion, I want to share one with you. I mentioned Carter G. Woodson. And my district in East Orange, New Jersey, the superintendent at the time departmentalized us from grades 3 on up. So we changing classes to 3rd graders. I taught 5th. So we were a team. The language arts, social studies, science, and math teachers, you know, we're one team. We all have the same youngsters. So with me being me, I decided my 5th graders need to be conversant in the miseducation of the Negro. These 5th graders. So I didn't give them the whole book to read, but I would photograph or photocopy certain passages I wanted them to know. The book is in public domain, so it's not an issue. And there's a zillion publishers of the miseducation of the Negro because it's in public domain. So I gave them these folders with clear covers, and they would literally, I would see them in the hallway walking around with these folders proudly with their heads up, because the whole vibe of the classroom was getting them, was instilling in them this sense of pride in being African-American young people. So
Brilliant.
I would see them as they go to other classes with the folder and they're under their arm and their heads up and they're proud because they're learning about this man, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, from their 5th grade teacher, Mr. Kafele.
Yeah.
So they get into the language arts class one day, and I guess their folders were sitting on the desk. And the teacher, who happened to be a white woman, saw them. And she knows nothing about Carter G. Woodson, nor the miseducation of the Negro. When the dismissal bell rang, and that this particular group of students was my homeroom, so they come back to me to get ready to go home, she stormed into my room before they got there. And she had one of those folders. She slammed it on the desk, bam! And she said, "This is what you're teaching them? This racist crap?" So I'm on live this morning, and let me see how I can word this. I didn't keep my composure, y'all, but I'm not going to get deep with that. I'll write that in a book one day. But I did not keep my composure.
Understandable.
All right. So I in fact, I'll say this much. I was about to be appointed assistant principal at a different school literally the next month. I put that in jeopardy, so I thought. But when my principal got wind of everything, she said, "Hey, Kafele, what it is, right?" And they went on and appointed me anyway. So here's the thing. I just spoke my mind. That's what I mean. I don't mean I was violent or anything. I just spoke my mind. But here's my point. I know she was in there saying to the young people, this is racism. Kafele is teaching racism. So the next day, they walked into my room with a book she gave them that had nothing to do with curriculum. She just gave it to them. And the book was entitled Robert E. Lee, My Hero. I will never forget. Right.
That's heartbreaking.
Now I went off for 2 days. Right. So, and jeopardized my leadership career because it was on the brink. And but I had to let her know. And of course I could be very diplomatic, but something, sometimes, and you notice everybody on the call, sometimes in life, you just gotta let loose, man. Diplomacy don't always work, right? And that was one of those situations where I wanted her to feel my energy. I wanted her to feel my soul.
No time to tiptoe.
When you give my Black kids a book about Robert E. Lee that refers to him as my hero, I had to let them know, y'all. But something, and then I'm gonna close this. When I got home that night, those 2 nights, and I want y'all in the audience out there in the family to hear me. Them 2 nights when I got home and I looked in my mirror, and I'm looking right in this camera right now, I felt real good about myself. That I defended my kids and I defended a people that most of them I'll never meet in life. That I didn't back down. That I spoke my piece. I spoke my truth unapologetically. I can feel good about myself for that, But that's I'm saying that to say, that whole back in the day. So I got a question I'm throwing at you with that. I'm like telling you.
Okay. Well, I've got a comment at some point. But maybe I should weave it in.
Well, yeah, weave it in. Let me throw it at you. How do we shift the white educator that's stuck in the narrative of that teacher? Because everybody ain't there. It's that particular teacher that's stuck in that particular thinking, that particular demeanor. How do we shift that teacher away from the discomfort surrounding teaching of and the discussion of the history, the experience, the truth of being Black in America?
What you do is you look them right in the eye, you get close, kind of invade their personal space, and you say, perhaps you've misjudged the date of your retirement.
Wow.
No. One of the things I found is that when you confront people with their hypocrisy, it doesn't always go well. So I've got to find a way to have them come to the discovery. as much as possible, rather than say, I admonish you from afar or from close by. And one of the things that I found this seems to be really helpful is when it's going to be really divisive like that, always start with what you have in common, right? So we're going to really talk about, what do we really believe? Are we here to teach? Good. Are we here to teach all kids, not just the easy ones, the ones that look like us? And we have those conversations about those principles far beyond or before we actually start doing practical things, because principle informs practice. It also creates purpose and why.
Yeah.
And then you begin to see, oh, I believe in this strongly, but I've been doing stuff that is not out in alignment with that. And what we found with educators all the time, principals, assistant principals, teachers, is that what gets you out of bed in the morning is that you get to spend the day working in alignment with your principles. When you're not in alignment with your principles, then you are exhausted at the end of the day. You're cranky and you don't get out of bed. You're not full of fire or anything else. So the idea that we go to a teacher and say, truly, would you publicize what you believe? For example, one of my principles is whoever does the editing does the learning. So I don't edit students' work. I teach them how to find their mistakes and correct them, and they never make those mistakes again. I say that I'm out for agency, voice, and choice, and thereby self-efficacy. That means I need to do the things like show you how to self-monitor and then empower you to inform your own instruction, not just me telling you what to do, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I say this, but do I do that? But one of my favorite things to do is to provide scenarios like you just described, hypotheticals. And we sit in small groups of 4 to 6 or whatever it might be and say, here's a scenario. How should a principal open up the conversation? Or, and if the teacher responded like this, what will be our second response? This is rehearsal, because what happens is when you've rehearsed it, when it's not emotionally urgent, it's not off the top of your head, you're just trying to get through the day and you're dealing with all the other stressors in your day. Allostatic load, A-L-L-O, allostatic load can sink in and you are not your best self. And certainly with Black educators and brown educators, I think there's way more allostatic load of trying to be perceived as legitimate and all the other issues that are out there. But I want rehearsal to hear what all my colleagues think, so that in the moment, I have the tools and the perspective of how to respond. But if we never really debated controversial, uncomfortable situations like this before, we wouldn't have the wherewithal to do something constructive when it really happens. So I would bring that up with the faculty, something that's clearly this person is way whacked out in an extreme way when it comes to this understanding of racism and what's going on and the impact on the Black students in the class, all this stuff. And I would have to take it back and say, let's walk through that. I'm a really big believer in instructional coaching, and as a principal to teacher, but as teacher to student. And I would have to ask a series of questions where it wasn't me telling them, here's how you're wrong and how you're going to fix it. It would be me asking questions to get them to arrive there. And, I've got a whole list of those questions. So do a lot of people to do that. But I'm going to have the conversation to continue the conversation, not to shut it down and say, you're wrong and I'm right, because it often doesn't work. However, I think there is a place for explicit desist. You must stop because of the harm you cause. And then we come back at it another time. Is there ever a moment where I should wait 24 hours because I'm about to say something that's going to get me in trouble and is not going to help at all? Yes. But if there's somebody being harmed, sometimes I have to put that to one side and do what is called basic human decency and really step in. So that's 3 or 4 ideas initially. And then the last thing is the degree to which I can get that teacher to have a lived experience, because what's obviously not happening, they're not going to score high on empathy. And so, it's kind of like in my church, there's like 5 services a day. And behind every service, sometimes I get asked to come in and be like a lay leader to help out. Okay. So in front of every service, we go behind the cross and all the stuff where you can't see us. And it's the pastor, the music director, everybody, and me, others. And we all say this. Not one person says it and we all nod. That's passive. All of us say it. Remember, it's their first time hearing, seeing, perceiving, finding meaning in this. So we have to act like it's just as fresh to us the fifth service as it was the first.
That's
that
right.
really kind of compares nicely, parallels with teaching 5 classes a day or more as you do this. And so the idea that my first thought is, how do I see it through first-time eyes, or eyes that are being confronted with something that with which they've associated their identity? And then how do I make it comfortable enough to withstand the sting of change and feel like they're invited, not mandated to do it? I think that I need to spend time doing that. And that often happens with the kinds of questioning you'll do. So sometimes they're a complete, oh, I can't believe they just said that. And I have to say, like, I'm totally innocent. Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
I'd like to, where does that come from? Is that coming from a place of nurture and support or somewhere else? That kind of thing. And they have this superficial knee-jerk response. And my gift is to take them to a deeper level in a loving, inviting way, but to make sure there is first no harm perpetuated over and over again. Anyway, it's a lot of different ideas, but that's my first take.
No, that's great stuff. You know, if you good on time, let's stretch
I'm okay.
it a little bit further, and then we'll schedule a part 2. I was looking at my calendar, and we'll figure it out. But real quick, station break. Virtual AP Leadership Academy is sponsored by the Assistant Principal Identity. If you don't have a copy, what are you waiting for? Get yourself a copy. Go to Amazon, and also there's an article that was written, interview on me with Ed Week. You can go to my Facebook page or YouTube, not YouTube, or Twitter page, and check out the article about this book and about my work with assistant principals. And then Rick is an author of many books, and this is the latest one, Fair Isn't Always Equal: Assessing and Grading in Assessing and Grading in the Differentiated Classroom. And you can get that on Amazon as well.
Can I do one more break?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Matthew K is such a wonderful thinker, writer, teacher, and he's really good at these conversations. So Not Light But Fire is his first book for secondary. His new book came out with Jennifer Orr, and it's We're Gonna Keep On Talking. And it's about how do you do all that with elementary level. Yeah. So I just want to advertise it. Worth the purchase.
That's good. I got to get him on here too.
Oh,
yeah. Hey, I think it's your turn. Hit me.
Oh, goodness. All right. Let's see. I'm going to do one that's actually a bit more intense. Educate, and I wrote this down to make sure you're right. We always are very aware of the Reconstructionist amendments to the Constitution, 13, 14, 15, collectively are there. But one of the things that's interesting is that some educators and some members of the community don't know that education is not mentioned at all in the Constitution. Yeah. They thought it was, the right to, we make education compulsory, all that stuff. So here it is. It's not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. It's left to state constitutions to do that. But the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment requires that when a state establishes a public school system, no child living in that state may be denied equal access to quality schooling. It prohibits any state from denying, and here's a quote, to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. So a lot of people justify, schooling education is a right through that establishment or that equal protection clause. So my question to you is, where are we today with this and its functional effect of providing high quality education? And if we are adrift, and what needs to change in order to live up to the 14th Amendment's spirit and intent?
What a question. And that's, before I answer the question, in part anyway, we can do the whole session just on that question. We can go 2 hours.
Agreed.
On the whole question, because we're in a bad place. There's an organization that I'm a member of, National Alliance of Black School Educators. One of their slogans for years was education is a civil right. Yeah. Right? Education is a civil right. And the fact of the matter is, we know definitively that when you talk about education of Black children across America, we know that right is being violated.
Yes.
right? On just on a multiplicity level of levels, in terms of what black children are being exposed to. Let me give you some examples. You think about who's in some of those classrooms, right? See, when we talk about education being a civil right, then that implies that youngster is going to walk into a school and have a high quality, highly qualified teacher in that classroom. And if I don't have that, and I don't have the support that's required of me at home, then I could be in an inner city school and literally go K to 12 and not receive a quality education on the sole basis that I didn't have a qualified instructor in that classroom with me. Now, I get the teacher shortage relative to COVID, and I get the teacher shortage prior to COVID, and particularly as the numbers I read off in the beginning, when you talk about Black teachers representing 7% of the total teaching force in America,
Yeah.
and Black men representing less than 2% of the total teaching force in America. For me, it's criminal. And there's a lot of blame to go around as to why those teachers are not there in those buildings. So on the one hand, just who's in the classroom and am I most qualified? There's no other profession in terms of professions as opposed to jobs. There's no other professions where you've got such an abundance of ill-prepared, unqualified people in these professional positions, and in this case, a classroom teacher teaching children, right? And Black children, particularly in urban and rural schools, tend to be the ones most subjected to it. But then you talk about what they're learning. Matter of fact, let me switch gears. You talk about this culture of testing, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to find in your average suburban school, your average white suburban school, this culture of testing. Test preparation and testing. So now what happens? The children literally, because I've surveyed enough of them, the children literally think that the purpose of education is what they see and experience every day. They think that's school. They think that's education, right? To walk in a school in September and we prepping for a formative assessment. Right, and then we prepping some more in March in September, then October, and then November, or August for the southern schools. We're walking in there at the beginning of the year, and we going right to test prep. Then we get the formative. Then we analyze the data, and now the preparation is based on what was in that formative, and then we'll have another. But you're not going to find that in the white suburban school districts of this culture. And the key word is culture, this culture of test preparation, this culture of standardized assessments. It's not just the state assessment, it's all these assessments that take place throughout the course of a school year that they're subjected to. And then we scratch our heads asking the question, but why are so many of them turned off to education? And my response to them is, wouldn't you be too? Right? If all you're gonna do is test me, then I'm gonna be turned off to it as well. If all you're gonna do is prep me, then I'm gonna be turned off to it as well. So when we talk about education as a civil right, and we talk about the whole idea of what is the experience, like let me say this to you, Rick, on this. You're a speaker. You're in fact, give me that website address real quick while we got people on here. How did they get in touch with you?
Well, rickwormeli.com, but there's email there, but the email is rick@rickwormeli.onmicrosoft.com.
And what's the website?
rickwormeli.com.
And then the email will be right there. So y'all go to the
right there. Yeah.
You want to bring Rick in, go to the website, rickwormeli.com, right? Yeah. Now, I did that and lost my entire train of thought, right? So
the testing and the assessment over and over, and that's what they think school is.
Yeah, but I was going in I got it. So here's you and I. we are both speakers, right? So there's a lot of reasons that we walk onto these platforms, walk onto these stages, and walk into these rooms, right? And I'm gonna put that email address up here, Yolanda McKinney, put there, that website. So here's the thing, Rick. For me, the bigger picture of us walking into those rooms, those stages, whatever it is to create an experience for that audience that they're going to take with them and remember a lot of what we said weeks later, months later, because we know the human brain is not going to remember a lot of that. But if you and I can create some kind of an experience that it stays with them for a very long time, and yet they'll seek us out social media. I want more, right? Well, let's transfer that to school, because I'm very much cognizant of that. When you saw me speak last, which was 2019 at AMLE, make no mistake about it. I don't mean that, I just want to be transparent. In the back of my mind, I'm trying to create an experience in that room, right? That the folks, man, I ain't waste time listening to Principal Kafele today, right? I enjoy. See, not just I love the content, but I enjoy.
But I'm also elevated.
The room.
Yeah.
I feel elevated. I feel empowered.
Yeah.
So now let's go to the classroom. You test prepping me all day. Same daggone workbook. Same daggone reinforcement. And that experience has got me wanting to come back tomorrow for the same thing.
Not even close.
The same crap. What is it about that instruction that's, as you said, that's lifting me, that's inspiring me, that's empowering me, that's making me a believer in my possibilities? It's not there. What is it about that makes me feel I'm Ivy League material? I'm HBCU material. I can go anywhere and I can excel. You got kids walking around in these schools, man, wondering if they can even compete, because there's nothing about that experience that's got me feeling like I can hang with anybody on the planet.
Don't you think, though, that so much of that testing is done, particularly in those kinds of schools, because it's punitive in nature and they don't trust the professionalism of the education force, the teachers, to do right? So they feel like they have to prescribe something on top of them to shape them up in this politically motivated sense of accountability, but pedagogically lost sense of what we're really about. And until such time as we have educators rising up to political positions, and now, right now, everybody listening to the two of us, turn to somebody near you and that you trust and respect and say, I'll be your campaign manager if you'll run for office. That would be good. But until we have somebody setting policy who's knowledgeable about that, we're going to continue to do assessments out of some kind of wild, weird, corrupt notion of accountability and punitive nature as a way to shape up. No, that's not the way you do it.
Yeah.
And so we've got to professionalize or continue to get the professional nature of teachers, particularly in those schools, advertised, promoted, and clear, because so many people don't think of teaching as a true profession.
You know, they don't see it that way. And to me, it is the most noble. You know, that's what it is. Let me say it's 12:54. Let me throw one more at you, and then you throw one more at me, and then we schedule a part two. Right, because I know you got to run and all that kind of thing. Right. We got to do them rapid fire questions and.
Oh yeah,
Between
the two of us, rapid fire, maybe mislabeled.
I know, right? Hey, let me throw this at you. You know, I want to go back to that. Matter of fact, I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna go here. This will probably require more conversation.
Okay.
Let me say this. You know, Rick, through my travels, I have, and let me put my cousin up here. That's my cousin Dashan. You know, through my travels, Rick, I have met more colorblind, culture blind teachers than I can count. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about they tell me, right? I don't see race, I don't see ethnicity, I don't see culture. I just see the students, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I was in an environment once somewhere, which I won't name, and the teacher got on the proverbial soapbox, and I was there for the whole district, but they split them up into secondary and elementary. So elementary in the morning, secondary afternoon, whatever it was. And the teacher in the elementary got on the soapbox and started preaching at me and said, I don't see race. And the most of the people in the audience, which was predominantly white, as a matter of fact, it was all white, one black teacher in the room. They started clapping because the children were predominantly Latino and a smaller percentage black.
So she made the statement and the audience started clapping for the statement.
Yeah, they clapped for her.
Right.
I don't see race. I don't see ethnicity. Yeah. And they so as they clapped while she said that, her adrenaline started pumping. So she ratcheted up and said, and that's what's wrong with America today. If we would stop seeing the race of the children, the culture of the children, ethnicity of the children, America will be a better place. Man, they broke out into this big ovation. So when that session was over, I went to the superintendent and I said, you can rip that contract up, because I had a long-term contract. I said, you can rip that contract up. I'm not coming back here. I said, you work with them. And then when they're at a point when they're willing to receive, then I'm willing to come back. But I'm not here to compete. We ain't on the basketball court. We're not competing. I'm here for professional development, right? So with that, and then I'm gonna throw my question. I'm just giving you all this backdrop. I say three things as it relates to the colorblind, culture blind educator. Number one, I say, okay, so you've got this classroom where you don't recognize who they are racially, ethnically, culturally.
Yeah.
But whenever your dismissal bell rings, 3 o'clock, whatever it is, and they go outside, they're going into a world that's going to see everything that you either don't see or refuse to see, whatever the scenario is, they're going to see it. So what is it about your classroom that is helping them to learn how to navigate the real realities of the world as it is, right? That's number one. Number two, to not see who they are racially, ethnically, culturally is equivalent to the youngster saying to the teacher without saying the following. Teacher, if you don't see my racial, ethnic, cultural identity, you don't see me.
You're blind.
And if you don't see me, you cannot effectively teach me. And if you cannot effectively teach me, then why am I assigned to this classroom to you?
Exactly.
Right? So that's the equivalent. And then the third, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you. That youngster is of a particular racial or ethnic or cultural group. I don't want to suppress that. I want to celebrate it.
Yeah.
I want to accentuate it. I want to illuminate it, right? And I don't want to confine it to Black children. I want to give white youngster, Native American youngster, Asian youngster, Latino youngster, whatever youngster, I want to give you cause to celebrate that kid beyond pop culture, beyond entertainment, beyond athletics. I want you to see the totality of the greatness of that youngster, historically, culturally speaking. So that we turn that whole scenario into a win-win for everybody. So my question I want to throw at you, and you can, you run with it however you want, including the comments you want to throw at me. Does color and culture blindness have a place in America's classrooms? And if not, how do we dismantle it?
Oh my God, I want to talk about this for like an hour and a half. Oh.
It's some of them on there that probably saying, you got my attention. Go ahead.
This is one. I will tell you real briefly. Larry Ferlazzo.
Hey, before you answer, let me holler at Hovet right here. Look what he just said. I'm watching this session from the Innovative School Summit in Vegas.
then tell the innovative schools folks
Put
to
us
write
on the big
on a
screen. Right?
pen. I'll take a trip to Vegas to be with Baruti.
Yeah.
Well, first, Larry Ferlazzo, wonderful guy who blogs for EdWeek, did a whole piece on this. There's got several pieces on it from a lot of different people. So if you want to type in Larry Ferlazzo,
that's my man.
EdWeek blog, he's
Yeah.
talked about it. But one thing, I've actually, let me just put a sidebar. On the website after today, Baruti is going to be posting a handout.
Yeah.
And it's just a PDF, black and white. It's not all the colorful graphics, but it's a handout I use to have conversations about this back in schools, in case anybody wanted some tools, insights, practical activities, things like that. So grab it, run with it. It's the kind of stuff that I do when I come to a school. But in there are 2 or 3 slides literally on this. So know you've got more there if you want, besides this short little soundbite that I might do. In the scenario that's happening there, this color blindness comes from a place of, I perceive that I am not prejudicial, that everybody is lovely. And to me, that comes across as very discriminatory, and you're diminishing me by saying that. You're dismissive. And that comes from a position of real, privilege, that you can be dismissive of all that makes me me. And so in that moment, I would probably get really quiet until the room quieted down. And I would turn to this saying, why are you applauding? Where is that coming from?
Yeah.
And then I would begin to remind them that, yeah, you want to get rid of seeing race in America. Race is only coming because of racism. We did not have race until there was racism. So what are we going to do about racism, not about seeing race and doing this stuff? And that's how it's being perpetuated. So if you are really there and not being a hypocrite, and remember, confronting people with hypocrites, we want to be in alignment with what we believe. That's called integrity and having ethics and being professional. You would choose to fight the racism as a way to get rid of this. Now, color blindness, I again would try to make it experiential, and I would try to come up with some ways where I choose not to see a part of what makes you, you. And I'm diminished, and I only respond to the other aspect, and you're sitting there floundering and all mad and frustrated and feel like you don't belong. Belonging is huge. Unless there was damage by forceps at birth, we are hardwired to want to belong, to be perceived as not dead weight or in the way, but to actually be successful and belong. Why would you take that away? So I guess my first response is, let me walk you back from the knee-jerk superficiality and the place of privilege you have, and then pose some uncomfortable questions. But what I'm also doing is trying to model confronting in a way that's invitational and encourage the dismantling or outright tossing of things that people might initially have thought as not discriminatory, that technically maybe in its just simple definition, like a law of some sort, they thought, oh no, it's not discriminatory, but in its effect and function is racist. And so so many people claim, I'm not racist. Look, this is totally okay. There's nothing about race anywhere in here. Yeah, but what's the impact of that? Now, does that need to be, oh, now I see. Good. So now that we know that, do you have the courage to actually bring it up in conversation? And do you have the tools? And so what I would want to do in that moment is model how, as somebody who's white, would I talk to my white buddies about this, let alone somebody who's of color talking about it, which is so incredibly dismissive by white communities. Oh, that's just an angry black person talking. They always are those, liberals or whatever it is. And I'm like, whoa, don't you teach your children to scrutinize and critically look at the perspective? A critical examination of pedagogy and history, students thrive. Unexamined pedagogy and history, students wither. And our goal is to make these people thoughtful, compassionate, highly competent thinkers, voters, leaders, husbands, fathers, mothers, wives of the future. So the idea is that we're trying to make this world their own, but give them the tools to do it. The original quote we started with there. I think in that moment, I would see it as a teachable moment, and I might never be invited back. And I have said that many times. I
Yeah.
am never going to be invited back. I know it, but I will say this, because you hired me to bring all of me, not a superficiality, not a Hallmark card sentiment, syrupy sweet. I will not sugarcoat, because the real world is right here in these students' lives,
That's
not
right.
post high school. So please speak about maybe the working world, the adult world, fine. But here and now, you will recognize what's going on. And can I just tell you that I will
Got
walk
it.
that path and hand you a lantern as you need it? Yeah, I can do that. Anyway,
Mm.
that's my initial response.
I love it. Look here. We'll talk off camera. I can create a vacancy. It is a long way from now, but it's the first Saturday in December.
Oh my God.
I'm booked solid till
You are
February.
that good, man.
Oh man, I'm booked solid till February, March, but I can create this particular vacancy the first Saturday. So we'll talk
It's
off
up to
camera.
you.
Yeah.
Anytime is good.
If it's good for you, then then consider it done, y'all. We'll be back part 2 the first Saturday in December, right? But before then, we got to do these rapid fire, y'all. So those of you who are not a part of the family yet, we hope you continue to be. We got 20 questions. Hey Rick,
Oh my gosh.
1 word answer, 1 sentence max, right?
Oh, you're killing
Yeah,
me.
max. If you go over a sentence, you're gonna hear me say
Got it.
right?
And that means, yeah, it'll be the
Yeah,
real raw Rick.
yeah. So here we go. Is education on the right path for underserved children in America?
I can only say in some places it is. Some places it is woefully adrift.
Are you optimistic about the educational prospects for the masses of Black and brown students in America today?
Yes.
Can true equity occur in America's schools for Black, brown, and other underserved students?
Yeah, but it's going to take a lot of fortitude and creativity and redress,
Okay.
remedying injustices along the way.
Does Rick Wormeli's work contribute to the progress we desperately need?
God, if I'm lucky, I hope so with all my heart.
If you could do a reset on your life, would your line of work be different or the same?
Oh, the same. I'm very lucky in that way. I found who I am.
Same here. Why do you continue to do this work?
Because it's not done yet. And humanity seems to be in a place it could use a little a boost, a lighthouse in a storm from time to time. I don't want to pretend that I'm anything more than I am, but if you see the positives that are happening by the work done, it gets you out of bed in the morning.
What particularly fires you up within the work that you do?
The aha epiphanies, when teachers finally make a discovery and students make a discovery, and it's almost always related to, I didn't know I had this potential, and the things the tethers that were holding me down have now been released, and I can fly higher than I thought I could. That's just remarkable, and just I will climb the highest mountain for that.
What do you dislike about the work you do?
Well, travel and the toxic politics, particularly of school board members or business leaders who are not have any background in education that tell educators what to do. And so the question I always ask is, to what degree do I allow people who are untrained to tell us what to do? And that can be very uncomfortable.
What has been your greatest victory in this work thus far?
I think the work with English language learners, multilingual students since 1980 through today that I've done here in Northern Virginia and DC. And then, of course, where somebody takes some of the ideas and improves upon it and then shares back with the profession, I think that's been a positive, big impact.
What was your greatest mistake in this work?
I'm going to say it's 2. 1, assuming that I knew what I was doing in all situations. Very humble pie right there. 2, assuming that I could go into a school or institution, organization, and I could just fix it all myself, rather than seeing that leadership comes for how you cultivate that through other people. So I could have these goals and go, it's just faster if I do it myself. And that doesn't stick. And that's not positive. It's not constructive. The idea of how do I work collaboratively with others to achieve our goals together. That aha moment pointed out the mistakes I was making all along, that I could just do it myself.
Okay. What has been your greatest challenge in this work?
Well, I keep beating that horse, but the vitriol and politics of people who don't know what's going on in schools declaring policy on what should happen in schools, and the sycophants and the people who lack a spine to stand up to people they know are being indecent and inappropriate, inhumane, and are perpetuating this, yet by golly, for political expediency, they nonetheless toe that line.
Yeah.
That drains me dry. But I'm okay. I've thickened my skin and built my stamina.
I love it. I love it. Who inspires you in this work?
Well, yeah, present company included here, Baruti. I think anybody who really speaks up and models how to not just simply accept the status quo, but do it in a constructive manner. Paul Gorski inspires me when it comes to poverty and equity measures that are out there. William Zinsser, it really inspired me about writing and how you can write your way into knowing things. There are just so many people who are wonderful. I mean, Zaretta inspires me. Hammond, does that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look around. Oh, I really like Elijah Anderson.
Yeah.
Black and White Space, in other words, other folks. I'm trying to imagine some of my other books, but I mean, every year I get some new inspirations. Oh, I know. The new teachers are coming in and not succumbing to the cynicism of seasoned veterans who might have become a bit more jaded. Not that all seasoned veterans are jaded, but some of them are, and they're willing to walk their own path and not always succumb to that.
Yeah.
There's strength in that, and that gives me hope.
Love it. What are you reading right now? Book, blog, article, anything?
Oh, yeah. Well, I am. All right. Well, I'll just show you. I tend to read 3 books at a time. So I'm doing Fix Injustice, Not Kids. I'm reading Neurodevelopmental Differentiated Instruction from Australia.
Oh, wow.
Like there. And I love every S.A. Cosby book that comes out.
Oh, wow.
All the Sinners Bleed, really good. So I always do like murder mysteries, archaeological thrillers, and something that's contemporary in education.
What book would you recommend for our viewers today?
Well, the one I did hold up, I'll just say that. And then I will tell you.
Someone asked you to hold that up too.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
We're going to keep on talking. And it's Matthew K., Jennifer Orr. Matthew wrote the book for secondary. So get that. And just a reminder, that's not light, but fire. That's really good. And then golly, I had it here. I was just using it. Oh, I see. This one I highly recommend as a white person, let alone, a person of color, his brown, black, it doesn't matter. He's really done a good job.
Elijah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's Elijah Anderson, Black and White Space. It really is good. There's a lot about Philadelphia in there. If that's something that it might resonate with some of you, but those are the ones that I would recommend today.
We're almost done. What do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet?
To be really honest, I would like to write a fiction novel, young adult fiction. I think I could do that, or children's fiction. But the other thing is, I want to do this book and really help schools change their culture for accurate, ethical, equitable grading. Joe Feldman has got a great leap in that, grading for equity. Fair Isn't Always Equal does a lot of that. There are other books out there, but I'd really like to make it so that principals didn't feel like it was overwhelmed. How do I shift the culture of parents, communities, but also my faculty and myself for grading that is truly integral, is ethical, and of course is equitable and doesn't diminish anyone.
Good stuff. Are you satisfied with where you are professionally right now?
Yeah, but you know what? When I ask that in my presentations, the men say yes and the women are the ones that say no to a large degree. And then we have to stop and really consider what that means. Yes, because I have had this trajectory and where I am in my career, I'm great. I'm fine. However, for so many people of color, but also women, the answer would be different, I believe.
What could you say to a viewer out there who continues to face closed doors?
Oh, find the moments and keep track of them, almost a treasure chest. Find the moments where people have given you an email or written a message or said something to you, and write it down, where what you've done has lifted your spirits, has been something that, oh, I made a difference. And then really focus on, do you find meaning in the serving of others? And if not, what are some things I can do to move towards that? That this is actually a part of who I am, as my humanity. And my great goal is not to have accolades, but to have lifted others. Just explore that a little bit, and what that might mean for you, I think would help you get through some closed doors.
All right. What could you say to a viewer out there who's lost their fire?
Oh, it's the people with whom you surround yourself. So start hanging in writing, on social media, or physically in the space where people who light you up hang. And man, we are humans like that. We need that, and we come back stepping a little higher, a little, cloud nine. But the idea is, oh, I can take on the world. This problem isn't seen as so large. The other part of that is the endorphins and the dopamine you get through exercise, just through movement. It can change your perspective rather dramatically. Subconscious rises up, and you realize you unlock doors you didn't know were locked, and suddenly they're there, and you're making connections. So I would say the world of exercise and surrounding yourself with the people, like going to conferences or a retreat or institute, rather than just looking at it from afar, it is a dynamic, very significantly different experience.
Good stuff. Last question. If Rick Wormeli was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
Oh, hope.
Hope. I love it. I love it. Hey, Rick, appreciate you. This was dynamite. It was exceeded expectations, and we didn't even get halfway through. So we'll schedule. I'm looking at the first Saturday in September. But let me holler at the audience by saying, folks, you know how those of you who are part of the family, the Virtual AP Leadership Academy, if you enjoyed what you heard today, if it resonated with you, if it was useful to you, if it empowered you, if it's something you could use back at your schools, and give us those emojis. Those are the ways that that's the way we applaud the guest on this platform. Let him know what you thought of this conversation today, but obviously geared toward him. And I see them all coming now. Keep them coming. Let them know. My man, Dr. Stallings, says didn't want it to end. I know, right? I got so much more. I got more than half to do, so I appreciate all them comments coming.
Let's keep it going.
Yeah. Let them know once again. I'll say it. RickWormeli.com. You see the spelling of his name. Bring it together as one. RickWormeli.com. He's a full-time consultant. So if you want to bring him to your school, those of you who are not familiar with his work or being reacclimated to what he does, just reach out to him, and maybe you can bring him to your school, bring him to your district, and talk to the educators there. So that's RickWormeli.com. And then this is the most recent. Again, fair isn't always equal. You can get that at Amazon. Just go there right now. Assessment and grading in the differentiated classroom. You can go to Amazon right now and get yourself a copy. And if you put his name in the search bar on Amazon, then all his other books will pop up as well. So do that. On
Twitter, Rick Wormeli 2.
That's right.
Rick Wormeli
2. Make sure you put that number 2, right? The number 2 after his name, because there's some other ones on there with the same name, but they
were hacked, and I can't get it back.
That's what I figured it was. Yeah. So any parting words, Rick?
God, just so filled with gratitude, man. And I'm so lit up for the weekend. I mean, I have more professional work I have to do this weekend, and I'm going to be in a different place, a different headspace because of you. Know you have that much effect on people, man. And thank you for being you and what you do, and that you share it so freely with all the rest of us. We're better for you having been here and continuing to be here.
So freely. I see a Malika Andrews. I don't know if that's the Malika on the NBA NBA Today or not, but if it is, I appreciate you being here. And if it isn't, I still appreciate you being here. right? I just want to make sure if it is that I gave props. Yeah, I see all the comments, folks. Yeah, we gonna reschedule this thing. Put on your calendar. Not reschedule. We're gonna schedule a part 2 for the first Saturday in December. We on. So look here, folks. I appreciate you all being here. As always, I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, sitting in my daughter's kitchen. And join me, those of you who still have time, join me at the School Leadership Institute with Principal Kafele on July 11 and 12. That's this Tuesday and Wednesday right here in Charlotte. We go on 2 days. Go to principalkafele.com and go down to the announcements and then click the register button. And come on out and join me for 2 days in person, no virtual. And we're going to talk leadership for all day, probably over lunch as well. Before the sessions, after the sessions, because I ain't got nowhere to go. So just come on through, and I'll be glad to see you, glad to have you. Other than that, let me just give you the lineup for next week, and then we done, we out. Hey, Rick, stay there with me even when I go.
I will.
Next week, I got this big time superintendent that I actually hired as a teacher many years ago. Made the recommendation to hire her as a teacher, Dr. Marion Wilson, out of Staten Island, New York. She's the superintendent of the whole island, right? She's got, because all the schools in Staten Island fall under her jurisdiction. So she's got 90 schools, and she will be my guest next week. So we're gonna have a good conversation on leadership. Watch Facebook Live every Saturday morning, beginning at 10 o'clock with Sean Hurt. Create and Educate with Dr. Sheikah Houston and Dr. Tammy Taylor at 10:30. Unlock the Middle on Sunday nights at 7 with my man Josh Tovar and Dean Packard. And then the Village Leadership Group with Dr. Roz Gaskins and Coach Williams on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6. The Black Educators Rock Conference, July 13 through 16. Come on through Jacksonville, Florida. Go to rockconference.org and register. I'll be there the 15th and 16th, but everyone else will be there 13 through 16. So come on down. I'm doing the leadership session on that Sunday all day long from 10 to 3. We'll break for lunch and then come back, or we'll work during lunch. We'll figure that part out collectively. Where we at? Visit principalkafele.com for all the resources. Get yourself a copy of the Assistant Principal Identity. That's my newest book, but also go on and get the Assistant Principal 50 if you don't have it. But this is the new joint. It's 2 months old. It's doing very well. Make sure you get yourself a copy. And then lastly, subscribe to the Virtual AP Leadership Academy YouTube channel and hit that red button, and then you can binge watch all 167 sessions. This one will be live. It's live now. It'll be on there permanently right once I hit the end button. And then like and follow the Virtual AP Leadership Academy Facebook page. I haven't written a commentary in a very long time. Man, I've been tired on Sundays, but I promise you, once I get through this summer grind, because I'm getting ready to do 14 days starting tomorrow. So once I get through this summer grind, then we'll start writing the commentaries again. Finally, your diet, take care of yourselves, eat right, your exercise, get that work in, get that cardio work in, and your COVID precautions. Don't believe the hype is still here. So make sure that you are protecting yourselves from that and whatever other diseases are out here. Other than that, I appreciate y'all. Have a great week. Have an extraordinary week. Have your best week yet. Peace. Peace. Thumbs up. Cock that fist back. 1, 2, 3. Bam. There it is. I'll see y'all next Saturday. Y'all stay safe, and I will see you then.